Weddings are supposed to be the happiest day of our lives, a day filled with love, laughter, and memories families cherish forever. But every once in a while, fate steps in with a darkness no one sees coming. In those rare and deeply unsettling moments, a celebration meant to unite two people becomes a scene of chaos and heartbreak, leaving guests traumatized, families broken, and stories that haunt the headlines for years. These aren't just tragedies. They're chilling reminders that even on the most perfect days, horror can strike without a single warning.
A wedding that a suicide bomber turned into a massacre. These people are waiting to hear whether their relatives and friends survived.
On the night of August 17, 2019, what should have been a night of joy, laughter, and the celebration of love in Kabul transformed into a scene of unimaginable horror. Hundreds of guests had packed into the Dubai City wedding hall, a vibrant mix of Shiite and Sunni families, mostly from the Hazara community, all gathered to witness the union of a young couple full of dreams for the future. The air was alive with music, chatter, and the aroma of wedding feasts, an atmosphere that promised memories to last a lifetime. Children ran through the hall, their laughter mingling with the melodies of musicians playing traditional Afghan tunes. Elders smiled proudly, capturing the moments on cameras and phones, unaware that these would become the last images of a night that was about to be shattered. Just before the ceremony was set to begin, in the men's section near the stage, a suicide bomber struck. The vest he carried, packed with deadly ball bearings, detonated with devastating force, ripping through the crowd in a moment that seemed to stretch endlessly in horror. The joyous music was replaced by screams and panic as people were hurled across the room, families torn apart in a single terrifying instant. Children, the most innocent among them, were caught in the blast, their laughter abruptly silenced, their futures stolen in an act of cruelty that seemed almost incomprehensible. The bride and groom survived physically, but the grief that consumed them, the loss of parents, siblings, and friends, was a wound that no words could heal. Initial reports tallied at least 63 dead and over 180 injured, but in the days that followed, the death toll climbed to 92. Each number represented a life stolen, a family left shattered, a community grappling with trauma that would linger for years. The horror extended beyond the initial blast. ISIS-K claimed responsibility, explicitly stating that the attack targeted the Shiite community. Rumors of a second car bomb outside amplified the panic and fear, as emergency responders raced against time to treat the wounded and secured the area. The Taliban condemned the attack, denying involvement, yet the shadow of terror hung over Kabul like a storm cloud, a grim reminder that even moments meant for joy can be invaded by violence without warning. Afghanistan's president declared a national day of mourning, as families, neighbors, and the nation struggled to comprehend the scale of the tragedy. Streets were empty, schools closed, and marketplaces subdued, a collective pause as the country absorbed the loss. For the bride and groom, what should have been the most beautiful day of their lives, the beginning of a shared journey, was forever stained by violence, grief, and loss. Survivors and witnesses were left to carry memories of screams, falling debris, and the terrifying chaos that erupted in an instant. The bombing in Kabul serves as a haunting reminder of the fragility of human happiness. In a single heartbeat, laughter can turn to tears. Music can be replaced by screams, and the most sacred moments can be engulfed by horror. For the families affected, and for a city that bore witness to the atrocity, that night will never be forgotten, a chilling testament to how joy can be eclipsed by terror in the blink of an eye.
A horrible story out of Turkey. The president there is blaming ISIS and a suicide bomber as young as 12 years old for a deadly wedding attack.
On the night of August 20th, 2016, a Kurdish wedding in Gaziantep, Turkey, was meant to be a night of joy, music, and celebration. Over 200 guests had gathered for the henna night festivities, dancing in the streets near the Syrian border. Laughter and song filled the warm evening air, the kind of happiness that only a wedding can bring. Families had traveled from distant towns. Children ran freely among the dancers, and elders watched with pride as generations came together to honor love, tradition, and community. The smell of food, flowers, and perfume mingled in the night air, creating an atmosphere that seemed almost magical. But in a single heartbeat, all of that joy was obliterated. A suicide bomber struck, and the cheerful scene transformed into chaos and horror. The explosion tore through the crowd with merciless force. Bodies were thrown into the air, the scent of smoke, blood, and fear hanging heavy over the streets. Screams of terror filled the night as panic spread among guests who had come to celebrate life, not witness death. Reports later confirmed that at least 57 people had lost their lives, a heartbreaking toll that included 34 children and 13 women. Scores more were injured, many critically, their cries echoing in the streets as emergency responders rushed to help. Among the victims, the groom himself was caught in the blast, though he survived with injuries described as non-life-threatening. The bride mercifully escaped unharmed, but the joy that had filled the evening was replaced by shock, grief, and trauma that would haunt the survivors forever. Authorities quickly pointed to ISIS as the likely perpetrators, and chillingly, Turkish President Recep Tayyip Erdogan revealed that the suicide bomber was believed to be only 12 to 14 years old, a child twisted into a weapon of unspeakable violence. Eyewitnesses recalled seeing two suspicious figures near the party just before the explosion, heightening the fear and confusion as investigators worked desperately to piece together the events of that night. This attack was not random. Many of the guests were supporters of the Kurdish People's Democratic Party, HDP, and security analysts suggested that the bombing was a calculated act of revenge against the Kurdish community, carried out in retaliation for ISIS losses in northern Syria. The assault sent shockwaves through Gaziantep, a city already on edge due to the Syrian conflict just across the border. In the aftermath, hundreds of mourners gathered to bury loved ones, the streets lined with sorrow where once music and celebration had prevailed. The grief was collective, suffocating, a deep wound that left an entire community trembling with fear and heartbreak. What should have been a night of unity, joy, and cherished tradition had been transformed into a massacre. Children, families, and friends who had come together to celebrate life were instead confronted with the brutal reality of terror, loss, and devastation. The celebrations meant to mark the start of new beginnings were now forever haunted by death, echoing with memories of screams and the sudden rupture of innocence. In Gaziantep that night, the cruelty of violence pierced even the most sacred human moments, a chilling reminder that joy, happiness, and hope can be extinguished in the blink of an eye, leaving scars that will endure far longer than the fleeting sound of laughter and music. Even years later, survivors and families continue to relive the horror, replaying the terrifying minutes when life shifted from celebration to nightmare. The tragedy of that night serves as a grim testament to the fragility of human joy and the destructive power of hatred, a haunting story that will remain etched in the memory of a city, a nation, and the world. On the evening of May 24, 2001, the Versailles Wedding Hall in Talpiot, Jerusalem, shimmered with the energy and excitement that only a wedding can bring. Nearly 700 guests had gathered to celebrate the union of Karen and Asaf Dror, filling the air with laughter, music, and the unmistakable hum of joy. Children weaved through the crowd, their laughter mingling with the melodies from Sarit Haddad's cover of Lev Zehav, while parents and grandparents watched proudly, savoring the moment when generations came together in celebration. The hall was a world unto itself, warm and bright, where love seemed eternal, but in the blink of an eye that world was ripped apart. Without warning, a large portion of the third floor collapsed. The ballroom, once alive with dancing and music, became a scene of terror. Hundreds of guests plunged through the collapsing floors, crashing onto the lower stories with a devastating force that no one could have imagined. Screams pierced the air, mingling with the crashing of debris and the choking dust that filled every corner of the hall. Chaos consumed the space. 23 lives were lost in those terrifying moments, and over 350 people were injured. many critically. Among the fallen were children, elders, and friends who had come together for a night of celebration. The bride, Karen Dror, sustained serious pelvic injuries that required multiple surgeries, while her 80-year-old grandfather was among those killed. The groom, Asaf, survived with only minor injuries, but the happiness of the evening was gone, replaced by grief that would last a lifetime. Rescue efforts were immediate and harrowing. The Home Front Command, alongside specialized search and rescue units, worked tirelessly amid fears that the rest of the building could collapse at any moment. With bare hands, rescuers dug through piles of concrete, metal, and shattered dreams, pulling survivors from the wreckage while the cries of the injured echoed across the hall. Ambulances raced to hospitals, sirens wailing through the streets of Jerusalem as families clung to hope and prayed for news of loved ones. By the time the dust settled, only 3 people had been pulled alive from the ruins. 23 names were etched forever into the memory of the city, a haunting testament to lives lost too soon. Investigations revealed the horrifying truth. This disaster was not a random accident, but the result of human error and negligence. The building had been constructed using the Pal-Call method, a lightweight floor system known to be unsafe. Supportive partitions that had temporarily held up the sagging floors were removed by the owners, and warnings of structural instability were ignored. The combination of flawed design, poor construction, and disregard for safety turned what should have been a night of love and unity into a catastrophic massacre. Eli Ron, the engineer behind the Pal-Cal system, along with the wedding hall's owners and other engineers, were eventually convicted of causing death by negligence, a grim acknowledgement of preventable tragedy. The scars of the Versailles collapse ran deep, not only in the hearts of grieving families but across all of Jerusalem. A memorial garden now stands near the site where the names of the victims are inscribed, a silent reminder of that fateful night when celebration turned to horror. The memory of that evening serves as a stark warning. Even in moments meant to be joyous and sacred, human error and negligence can bring ruin in a heartbeat. The night that should have been filled with music, love, and hope became a nightmare etched into the city's collective memory, a chilling testament to the fragility of life and the devastating consequences of ignoring danger.
When masked gunmen launched a brutal assault during a wedding celebration. According to authorities, the 27-year-old bride was fatally shot.
It was supposed to be the happiest night of their lives, a fairy tale wedding in the quiet village of Goult, southeastern France. Music, laughter, and the scent of flowers filled the air as family and friends celebrated the union of a young couple. The bride, 27 and radiant in her gown, had just said "I do" to her 25-year-old husband. They stepped out into the cool night, arms linked, smiles still bright, surrounded by loved ones, including the groom's sister and a 13-year-old boy believed to be the bride's son. The night seemed perfect, a storybook ending. But in the final moments, as the celebration wound down and the guests began to leave, paradise turned to hell. A car roared down the quiet village road and screeched to a stop. Masked figures jumped out, armed and unhesitating, moving with deadly precision. There was no warning, no hesitation, only the crack of gunfire tearing through the calm. Chaos erupted instantly. Guests scattered. Screams pierced the night, and the festive air was replaced with smoke, terror, and blood. The bride was hit multiple times, collapsing in front of the vehicle that had brought death to their doorstep. Her wedding dress, once a symbol of joy and new beginnings, was soaked in red. Her husband was struck in the chest, fighting for life, while the boy and the groom's sister were caught in the hail of bullets, their cries echoing through the village streets. In a desperate act of survival, the wounded groom leapt behind the wheel of a nearby car, trying to escape the nightmare. With adrenaline and terror fueling him, he slammed into one of the attackers, killing the masked gunman instantly. The body crumpled in the street beside the bride, a grim testament to the sudden, unimaginable violence that had overtaken the night. By the time authorities arrived, the attackers had vanished into the darkness, leaving a scene of carnage and devastation. The bride and the gunman were dead at the scene. The groom, his sister, and the young boy were rushed to nearby hospitals in critical condition, their lives hanging in a delicate balance. Shock gripped the village. Residents looked on in disbelief, struggling to comprehend that a night of love and unity had been shattered in seconds. French authorities immediately launched a full-scale investigation. Prosecutors in Avignon opened a case for murder and attempted murder by an organized gang. Early reports suggested the attack was likely targeted rather than random, with possible links to organized crime or long-standing grudges. Whispers spread quickly. Some sources reported that the groom and his sister had past convictions, including violent offenses, while the bride had no known criminal history. An innocent caught in a storm she could never have anticipated. The Moroccan community in the region, to which the couple reportedly belonged, was left reeling, struggling to reconcile the violence with the joyous occasion that had been intended to mark the start of a new life. As of now, the identities of the attackers remain unknown, and police continue to hunt for the gunman believed to be at large. The serene village of Goult, rarely in the headlines, was thrust into the center of a shocking tragedy, one that raises chilling questions about safety, revenge, and the terrifying reality that even a wedding can become a battlefield in the blink of an eye. On the night of September 27, 2023, the Al Haytham Wedding Hall, perched on the edge of Qaraqosh in Iraq's northern Nineveh province, was alive with celebration. Guests cheered as the bride and groom stepped onto the dance floor for their first dance. Cameras flashed, music played, and fireworks erupted from the floor, an indoor display meant to dazzle and delight. But in an instant, the spectacle turned to horror. Sparks shot upward, hitting the ornate ceiling. Within seconds, flames erupted from the chandelier, spreading with terrifying speed. At first, there was disbelief, then panic. Burning debris rained down, and the cheap, highly flammable plastic panels of the ceiling ignited like tinder. Thick, acrid smoke filled the hall, choking the air as screams replaced the music. I saw the fireworks climb to the ceiling. The whole hall went up in flames, recalled 17-year-old Rania Wad, who survived with burns to her hand. Others weren't so lucky. The bride and groom escaped, but not unscathed. Both suffered burns, and the devastation reached deep into their families. The bride lost 3 brothers, uncles, and young cousins. The groom lost his mother. A survivor described the scene in disbelief. "I have a friend whose whole family died. His children, his wife, everyone. It's a human catastrophe." The fire began sometime between 10 AS and 10:45 p.m., witnesses said. One of the fireworks hit the roof, a man explained. Everything caught fire and started falling on people's heads. In the chaos, the hall's owner cut the electricity, thinking a short circuit had caused the blaze. But this plunged the hall into darkness, leaving terrified guests disoriented amid smoke, flames, and blocked exits. The building, designed for 500, was packed with nearly double that number, and there were no emergency exits to guide people to safety. Some survived by sheer luck or quick thinking, but many did not. As flames consumed the venue, the roof collapsed, trapping guests beneath the inferno. Firefighters arrived too late. Outside, ambulances raced through the streets, while people gathered at hospitals to donate blood, desperate to save any who could be saved. The official death toll ranged from 107 to 114, with over 150 injured, many suffering severe burns. Children were among the dead. Survivors arrived at hospitals wrapped in bandages, traumatized and in shock. Investigators later confirmed that the hall was lined with highly flammable sandwich panels. A fire safety expert said grimly, "These fires are completely avoidable, but no one ever thinks about it until it's too late." The Iraqi Interior Minister declared the disaster 100% accidental, blaming the fireworks. But negligence, overcrowding, lack of emergency exits, and unsafe building materials turned what might have been a minor accident into an unimaginable tragedy. 14 people were arrested, including the hall owner and those responsible for the fireworks. Several local officials were dismissed. The Prime Minister vowed the harshest punishments. 3 days of national mourning followed. Qaraqosh, once Iraq's largest Christian town, still recovering from the horrors of ISIS occupation, was now burying entire families. Outside the morgue, mothers wept, grandparents clutched photographs, and survivors tried to make sense of the unthinkable. "I'm waiting for the bodies of my daughter and 3 grandchildren," said Mariam Kader. One man managed to save his grandson but lost his wife in the chaos. Through it all, the bride and groom stood among the ruins, their faces burned, their spirits shattered. For over 100 guests, it was their final night. What began as a celebration of love had been transformed into a human catastrophe, a horrifying reminder of how negligence, greed, and broken systems can turn joy into death in an instant.